I wanted to show you this woke mind virus. So here's James Lindsay. So some people like him, some people don't like him. I mean, I don't agree with everything he says, but I think he makes some really good points. I think he's very well read about leftism and wokeism. Says, why do communists always glorify criminals? Well, let's take a look here, because it is definitely something that they do, and we see that in modern culture. It's part of the cultural revolution in the West. All leftists seem to think first of the criminals. And I ask, who will think of the children? Well, not the leftists, unless they're going to try and do, gender medical experiments on them. But let's see James Lindsay here. Let's see what he has to say.
Hey guys, it's James Lindsay again. You guys are all asking, I hear it all the time. Do you understand why communists venerate criminals? Why they glorify criminals? Why they're always glazing people like George Floyd, Luigi Mangione, Breonna Taylor, say your name, and whatever else. They're always criminals. Why? Well, there's a bunch of reasons. Let's just break down.
We saw this in Cincinnati as well. And where you have now community leaders demanding that the guy who got attacked by that mob, the white guy who got attacked, now be charged with felonies for inciting felonies. It's an ironclad rule that they will support whoever is destroying rule of law.
On a couple. There's a really big one that I want you to understand, though. Of course, number one, it gets criminals out in the streets. Guess what that means? When you have criminals out in the streets, you have destabilization. Destabilized communities can have a revolution. You want problems so that the state can step in and solve them. Number two, it erodes the rule of law. They want to make sure that the rule of law doesn't mean the rule of law for everybody. So they, push criminals and try to make it look like, there's extenuating circumstances for certain marginalized groups or whatever else. But these aren't the big reasons. The big reason, actually, that communists venerate criminals is very simple. It's because they're attacking the system. When you venerate a criminal, when you make a hero out of a criminal, when you're glazing someone like Luigi Mangione, who's a murderer, or George Floyd, who's a drug dealer, what you are doing is making people question the system that considers them a criminal. This is how communists think. It's always, how do we attack the system so that we can get people to hate the system so that they'll tear down the system, which is mean to have a revolution. And it's never the issue, guys. The issue is never the issue. It's always the revolution. Okay, so
yes, it's always the revolution. Issue is never the issue. It's always the revolution. And they don't need, the average leftist out at the protesting whatever, they don't need to understand what's happening. Yes, the academics know what they're doing. The politicians know what they're doing. The activists know what they're doing. But the useful idiots, they don't need to. They've just created this atmosphere, this political atmosphere for them, in this bubble, whereby they just have to support whatever feels progressive, whatever feels like it's not right wing. It just feels like it's progressive. They don't have to think about it. They can change their mind. They're just waiting for orders, essentially, right? It's just essentially political fashion, ultimately. And ultimately, that is helping towards that is building the instability that the people controlling them want. The academics, the politicians, the activists, right? They are serving that purpose, even if they don't really know what they're doing. Let's continue.
These criminals, because it makes people question the system that makes them criminals. The logic is, if we had a different system, we wouldn't consider those people criminals, would we? If we had a different system, there wouldn't be criminals, maybe. So they glaze criminals so that people will question the system that criminalizes them. That's the whole game. And the reason they do that is because what they want is a system like they had in Soviet Union, where the going rule was, you show me the man and I will find you the crime. Okay, so they want to take a fair system and they want to replace it with an unfair system that they control. And that lines up with everything else about their marginalized groups and everything else. So the big reason that they venerate criminals, that they glorify criminals, is so that they can get people to blame the system for failing the criminals and want to have a revolution to change the system.
Well, I mean, that Mangione, The guy who shot the pharmaceutical executive was a perfect example of that. Immediately, it was not his fault. It was the pharmaceutical companies. They were to blame. And it wasn't subtle, right? This was overt. This was the overt message they were putting out, right? It wasn't the criminals. The criminal wasn't to blame. The assassin wasn't to blame. It was the pharmaceutical companies that were to blame. This is what I'm talking about here, right? Black community leaders speak out on viral brawl, where a mob beat up a couple of white people, a white man and a white woman. And it was a mob, and it was a brutal beating.
6 individuals were charged with aggravated assault, which is a felony. The white guy incited or urged 6 other people to commit a felony.
The method by which this situation has been handled raises serious questions as to whether there's bias involved in the investigation. It also brings into question the possibility of a lack of integrity and whether there's something else to hide.
Yeah, it really brings it into question. I mean, it's almost as if you can't just try and beat people to death in the streets, that mobs can't just beat people to death in the streets because they're offended or something, or they're pretending that they did something to offend them after the fact. I mean, boy, what a system. But this is what James Lindsay is talking about here, right? And they're they are this is victim blaming 101. I mean, it couldn't be any more victim blaming than this victim blaming right here. I mean, literally turning the tables here, is turning it around. Like, no, it was the guy who was beaten up by a mob, the man and the woman who were beaten up by a mob. It's their fault. So this is what we're calling these days race communism. And nobody wants to live in a world like this, or no sane person wants to live in a world like this. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. Please like, share, and subscribe. Subscribing really helps me out. I thank you for that. I will see you next time.